few more questions of Sheriff Allman, and then I believe we also have at least one or two members of the public who would like to comment.
Finish your question.
With regard, I'm making the assumption that we save money with home detention and work release. Is that true, or?
Not only save money, but there is a cost for people to participate in that, and that money has been collected, and that money goes into the general fund. So not only are we saving the $77 a day, we're increasing the coffers of the county.
So my obvious question is there more that we could do to maximize work release and home detention?
Absolutely, and the Chief Probation Officer, Wes Foreman, I think he's in here. He's in there. We have a meeting set up for tomorrow for some new GPS ankle bracelets that we're going to try to increase the number of inmates that we have on that and reduce the number of inmates in the jail as well as increase the coffers of the county.
And in some cases, if it's a minor offender with a nonviolent history, it might be cost effective for us to put them on home detention even if we're not getting a fee from them. Is that
It possible? Is, but however, we do not have that many inmates that meet that criteria in jail. Our judges usually route those directly to probation, and there's not a lot of jail time on that.
But I'm glad to hear we are going to be identifying whatever opportunities we do have.
Absolutely.
The vacancy factor that you cited in the beginning of your presentation, did you have an average for the 08-09 year thus far?
We were asked to have a 7% vacancy factor, and we have a 6%.
Okay. And then also with regard to the jail, you said you had a couple of vacancies you're holding off hiring, but my understanding is we don't have a choice with corrections. We have to staff to the appropriate level.
We do, and right now we're staffing with overtime because of the couple vacancies we've had of people leaving.
But I doubt if it's cost effective to staff with overtime, or that's certainly not a long-term solution.
It's not a long-term solution, and I don't believe it's cost effective. On a short term, it is cost effective, but not on a long term, especially when you're having employees working 5 12-hour days.
And if the board were to well, with regard to the Covelo deputies, there's kind of two issues there. It's fully staffing and then also getting people to Covelo. And the two people that you would like to hire, you've identified two people who are willing to be resident deputies in Covelo.
We've recruited specifically for Covelo, and we have 5 applicants who have gone to Covelo and met with the community. Supervisor Chair Pinchers was at the meeting where these 5 people met the community. There were approximately 45 people, and of those 5, we've concluded 3 of the backgrounds, and with the board's approval of allowing me to fill the Covelo positions, I'll hire 2. Now we have 3 vacant positions with the sheriff's office, and the third isn't going to be filled at least until the new fiscal year.
If in addition to those 3 current vacant positions, if the board was to direct that your budget had to save an additional $500,000 for the current fiscal year, what impact would that have on staffing, and where would you cut?
I can tell you that using the $1.1 million figure that was discussed, if we had to cut it by March 1st, I'd lay off 25 deputies, and if it was April 1st, I'd lay off 34.
That would pretty well decimate your department.
And decimate public safety in Mendocino County.
Thank you.
Supervisor Brown? Is that all, Supervisor McGowan?
Yes.
Okay, Supervisor Brown. Smith. Excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that we're somehow losing sight of what we're supposed to be doing here today, and with all due respect to my colleagues, there are a lot of these other sort of side issues that I think have some impact, but it's sort of like trying to talk about balancing the budget by discontinuing bottled water. I mean, Sheriff, I know that you have already put a lot into, I'd say historically, but particularly in the last 6 months, working with CEO Mitchell to try to curtail overtime, try to look at these other budgetary savings issues. You've done that, and you're very clear that you're going to continue to do that. We're also talking about the revenue side, getting the zip ties going. I've been on this board for over 4 years now, and I've been talking about fees not only in your department, but all the departments, in that we have not exercised our authority to collect the fees that we could have. Hence, what if we had been doing it for 4 years in all the departments? Where would we be today? We wouldn't be talking about the kind of numbers we are had we sort of executed that authority historically. So I think that we really need to get on and talk about the 1.1 million, because the task that we have specifically here today, what the agenda summary is, what the direction of the board was, is how are we going to approach the budget shortfalls? And these other issues are fine and they're good and they may have an impact, but I think they're going to have very little impact on 0809. They may have greater impact, especially if you're talking about fee generation. Obviously, that's cumulative over time. So any action that we take in April and May will have far more impact in 09, 010's budget, and we ought to get on with it. And I concur, let's expedite. But what I've gathered from this discussion is that we've had a number of departments that have come forward, more or less, and given us where their plans to curtail expenditures and meet the budget expectations, the budget they were given as per the authority that this board has. So what I have down is that we have, and these are specific dollar amounts that the board, I think, has to reconcile. We've got roughly $9,400 from the auditor's office. She gave us an explanation of where she could cut, how she is cutting, and that's basically the balance. So we need to find $9,400. And we've already gone through the MTO, we've gone through the VTO, we've gone through the specific authority that we've given for 29 positions of layoff in Health and Human Services today, followed up on our action, with concrete plans and measures that our budget balancing strategies, and we still have this 1.1 million roughly that we need to get to. So we now have to find 9,400, and this basically just goes in the layoff column. I don't, short of any other information from the CEO's office on other strategies we can use, it's called layoffs, and we've done it in the other divisions. So we're going to need to find out where these positions reside. So 9,400 in the auditors, roughly 191,000 as a compromise position, $650 from the planning and building, and that's with, I think, great, concern on the part of board members, myself, and what I picked up from my other board members, and how we get our planning processes completed if we're going to be cutting back. But that was a compromise position, and that director's going to bring us back the position. So, you know, we're approaching about $200,000 of layoffs, and I'm sure Ms. Glassy can give us how many positions just that 200,000 equals if we're going to general fund positions that have to be laid off to meet that budget shortfall by June 30th. Then we have the grand jury, which is an unknown number because we didn't get any new information from the grand jury on how they're going to curtail their expenditures, and I guess per government code and statutes, we're going to be waiting to hear from the judge on what authority the grand jury will have to overspend their budget. I was looking here, it was 96,000, approaching 100,000, and they projected it would be 140,000. So they're approximately 40% over budget, but we'll see where that goes. And we don't have the authority to do much about that per council's comments before. We've tried the best we can, I think the CEO has as well, to try to get them to understand the implications and ways that they could cut. Some of those suggestions they took, others they did not. So then we're left, Sheriff, with your budget, and we still have to find the 1.1 million. And you mentioned conferring with your colleagues and that you had done that and that you wanted to continue to do that with respect to where these positions are going to come from. So if they're not, if you, and you have a very large budget, so I think you have other opportunities to cut expenditures. We know in the jail arena it's extremely limited, if not non-existent. So, you know, I think it's up to you to figure out where the cuts are going to come from, and if you're really feeling that as a team player they can't come from the sheriff's office in any way, shape, or form, then I want to know what kind of dialogue is ensuing with your colleagues, because instead of coming right to us to have us figure out all the details, that's part of what I think the team playing is about. So if you're prepared to work with your colleagues to figure out, you know, where, if you're covering functions that are clearly critical to their mission, maybe they're willing to absorb some of those cuts, because someone's going to have to. So we'll ultimately make that decision, but you said you were engaging with them. You wanted to meet with them to come up with whatever kind of cost containments, but it's really down to that we have to find this $1 million. And you know, I think we need to hear from you in terms of how you're going to do it. I think you had some good suggestions here. I think you